Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the live stream that we're hosting around the child tax credit. Really excited to talk today about the effort to extend and make permanent the child tax credit that millions of families got to benefit from starting last year. So we're really excited for this panel that we brought from people all around the state of Florida. Really here to talk about the impact that the child tax credit has had and what we can do to bring it back. So I'll go ahead and start here with our panelists. Really excited to introduce here Ophelia, who's with the Central Florida Jobs with Justice. Welcome.
Hi, folks. Yes, thank you to be here. Thank you for allowing me to be here. My name's Ophelia. My pronouns are she, her, ella. And yes, right now I'm currently the Orlando organizer with Central Florida Jobs with Justice. And yeah, we're excited to be a part of the discussion around CTC as it's something that we really strongly believe in is important and necessary to provide for our families.
Awesome. Well, glad you're here too, and fellow Orlando person. I know we're joining in from all over the state. We have Jack, who's a part of the Tampa FOF team.
Yeah, everybody. Jack Wallace. I'm part of FOF, West Central Regional Organizer. Happy to be here.
Awesome. And from the super strong South Florida side, we'll have Darian joining in as well, who's gotten to will tell us a little more about the child tax credit. But welcome, Darian.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, so I'm Darian Borges. I am a community outreach organizer for FOF, and I'm in Miami, Florida, and I'm really, really happy to be part of this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Juan, who's also a part of the South Florida team.
Can you guys hear me clearly? Awesome. Yeah. I asked because in my screen I keep freezing. I am not in a bunker. I am here in Miami-Dade, close to Homestead, so maybe the internet reception this way is a little bit low, but I am the regional director for South Florida for Our Future Florida. So I encompass Miami-Dade County, Broward County, and Palm Beach County. Super excited to be talking about, just what it would be with the child tax credit now that we don't have it. But more excited to talk about the actions that we're going to take against these leaders who just keep on turning a cold shoulder and a blind eye to us citizens. So glad you all are here. Thank you for having me. Let's talk.
Indeed. Well, I think one of the first questions that we have is, of course, wanting to know what happened to it. The child tax credit was implemented last year, and in the middle of the year, people started receiving monthly payments, and so all of a sudden that came to a stop. And it's I'm sure a lot of people might have been wondering why. So I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Juan. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened, how it came about, and why it ended?
Absolutely. It came about, I believe, with the Build Back Better agenda, BBB, from President Biden. And what it was is to supplement, income, help with income for, being that we were in Corona, for things like, students' lunches, students' uniforms, for parents to be able to afford to take their, to have these in classroom sessions now at home, right? To afford bills, to afford what was necessary while going through the pandemic. It was not extended because, of course, we did not get the Build Back Better, all the parts passed. And so it has been taken away. Why did we not get the extension is because Marco Rubio and Rick Scott did not sign their signatures on what would be a nonpartisan piece of agenda, correct? Right? Because everybody needed or needs an extra supplemental, push while we're going through things such as the coronavirus and inflation, and now, unfortunately, the war in Russia.
Yeah, well, to talk a little bit about what it meant during the time that it was here, I wanted to present some of these, which is to outline a number of ways that this really helped. I mean, one of the immediate estimates was that this will cut child poverty in half, and that's what we saw. It helped over 65 million American children, and just in terms of how these funds were used, 47% of parents used it to buy food. 28% used money to help pay down their debts, ease economic burden, and then clothing for children. I mean, this is all essentials, right? And this is just a few of the statistics. I mean, everyone has their own personal story, and so I really was interested to open it up to the panel to just sort of ask, in your experience, did you were you a recipient? Did you see how it impacted families? Really interested to hear from folks from all around the state.
Yeah, if I could chime in on that. So, can you all hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. So, a lot of times when we hear about these tax credits and these tax incentives, they're fine and dandy, but how is that going to be when I do my taxes in a year, or whenever it is that we do our taxes? And it's when you have, like this plan did, that extra help every month, that it really makes an impact on your life. Um, I have a 8-year-old son, and my son, like millions of other kids throughout the pandemic, um, started to suffer from mental health issues during the pandemic. My son started to suffer from anxiety, and a lot of mood dysregulation, because of the pandemic. And there is a correlation to when the coronavirus started in March of 2020. And as a result, we had to make the decision to start taking him to therapy. And he's been in therapy for over a year now. And when we started getting these payments every month, these tax payments, that is how it helped my son, and it helped our family, because we now were burdened with the financial strain of taking him to a therapist. And a lot of these therapists for children, especially the ones that do cognitive behavioral therapy, that's not necessarily covered by insurance. And you have to pay out of pocket. So in my case, I could say that these payments were directly helping us as a family have better access to mental health, the mental health aspect, to provide for my son. And I'm sure there's a lot of kids that are in his boat, of how the pandemic affected them. And it was great, and it was so helpful to have these payments and know that the financial burden was going to be a little bit better every month, that I wouldn't have to start, looking for pennies and looking for this and looking for that to pay for my son's treatment. So a lot of times when we hear of people talking about these tax credits and this and that, this is a story, and again, I'm sure there's millions of kids out there throughout the country, of how these tax credits directly affected and helped different children and different families. So I'm very grateful, and for those tax credits, for those payments, and I this is something that's very important to families and to children. So it is definitely something that we need to work and fight for bringing back.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to add behind Darian. I just wanted to reiterate that nobody was balling off of the child tax credit check, right? A lot of the right would like you to believe that, hey, these people are taking trips on this money. We have voters that are, buying lavish estates. I could find nowhere of anybody utilizing the child tax credit that way. But if you look very closely, or not even too closely, you can see where a lot of our leadership, they misallocate funds. But a lot of people were inundated by misinformation that people were using this child tax credit as some sort of way to get rich, right? Which we know is not the fact by the statistics.
Yeah, just to jump on with what Darian and Juan have been saying, here in Orlando, we also found the same thing, that a lot of folks were using the child tax credit to cover oftentimes medical costs, whether it be therapy, mental health. We actually have, we talk to parents, same thing, right? Their children suffered during the pandemic because of the isolation, right? Because they had to do schooling from home. And this child tax credit helped get those children therapy that they would not, their parents would not have otherwise had the money to do that for them. And then a lot of them just were able to cover medicines that they normally struggle to cover, or that for some reason rose in price. We also saw folks use it to help ease, like it says on the slide, right, just some of their economic burden. And this could mean anything from the solitary vehicle that the family has, right? It could be a leaky roof. It could be shoddy plumbing. These are all things that, like, for folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, it's easy for them to be like, well, it's the next paycheck, right? I'll fix that. But the child tax credit made it so that these things that are essential for living, right? Everybody needs a working vehicle. Everybody needs to not have leaks in the roof, XYZ, so that folks don't have to keep putting these things off, and it makes their quality of life better. So whether it be medical costs or even just like things around your home, these are things that just make quality of life better that working folks deserve. And just like Juan said, right, it's not people getting rich. That's what they're using it for, to fix their house, to pay off bills, to get medical access that they normally wouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of to look at some more just figures around it, this is what it meant for people. It was up to $300 a month, and of course the average monthly cost per child is around $800, and it just made childcare more affordable. I mean, certainly you can look at cases of people using it to their individual needs, whether their child needed some supplemental educational tutoring, things like that. These were all cases where that was the case, and then as mentioned, you can just use it to save up for your child. It can be a direct benefit to them for any number of items. So this is a little more information, and what was at stake, and what we're currently fighting to still have.
If I can jump in, David, I think what's interesting is that hearing what folks have been saying, hearing what you've been saying, what Darian and Juan shared, what's funny is that the CCC actually covers, it's like a patch up, right? It was actually funny, a patch up for the lack of funding that folks have in everything else. The lack of funding that goes towards healthcare, the lack of funding that goes towards education, the lack of funding that goes towards infrastructure, towards energy efficient homes, like all of these things that in the long run, right, should be a part of budgets, a part of our local budgets, state budgets, federal budgets. But right now we're not getting the funding that we need. At the very least, the CTC helped patch up some of those gaps, right? That comes from the lack of budgeting in other areas. So at the very least, they can help us patch up those gaps with CTC.
Yeah, compared to other countries, just to feed off of you too, the other countries have been giving their citizens some type of relief because of Corona. The previous administration, the Trump administration, had lacked wanting to even get knowledge about the coronavirus, let alone start giving us supplements. We barely got help in masks and PPE here. And so President Biden, again, the administration saw the necessity for that relief to come into our hands as we sat here and suffered, not only through Corona, but through an administration that did not care federally. And what it looks like is there was an opportunity here statewide for our leaders to step up and say, hey, we are, being all affected by coronavirus. We all need this relief. And again, it was not done. So it just shows you how careless that the leadership has gotten within this past couple of years here in Florida.
Yeah, and talking more about the the path forward here, and the patchwork that is the CTC. It's a part of a larger effort to get some better answers to a lot of those existing problems. But of course, one of the big questions here is, especially for folks that were recipients or got to see it, did you see an impact during the time that the child tax credit had? And I know we've already heard a little bit about it, covering medical costs, providing therapy, and getting lessons, just covering basic food items. These are all covered and a lot of times used by parents for their kids. And now that it's gone, we really want to look at what it takes to bring it back. So to look at that, what is the path that we're looking at? We know that it was a part of the Build Back Better Act. The American Rescue Plan brought it in, but it just brought it in for a year or less than a year, as it is. And then we were counting on seeing it get through. And that unfortunately didn't happen. And obviously, in Florida, the people we elect didn't come through for us either. Neither Rubio nor Scott were supportive of this. But we need to keep the pressure on, of course. Make sure that we're calling our senators and making sure that they hear from us. And so urging that we take action, get this that has benefited millions of families in law from the pieces of the Build Back Better, or even the entire thing that would do a lot to help with the other issues that might be patchwork for line item budgets like healthcare, like infrastructure, like getting those things fixed in your house, because there's housing provisions in the Build Back Better Act that would allow for renovations and allow for updates to have more energy efficient units, things like that. So there's so much that is here, and then the child tax credit being a core part of it. These are some main actions. I know that the biggest one we have is, getting a petition out and making sure that our senators hear that, if we're benefiting from the child tax credit, we need to have senators that are going to fight for the people they represent. And that's a big part of this year being 2022. That all said, just wanted to kind of open it up and sort of ask, what are some things being done that people can participate in, either across the state or even just in general, things people can do virtually to support and call attention to the need to extend the child tax credit and make it permanent.
Well, I just wanted to say, David, we've been doing accountability calls for the last 5-6 months into Rubio, into Scott, into DeSantis. And so I hear a lot of sentiment from people that, hey, they're not going to listen. That we're beating a dead horse, right? And we here at For Our Future, we totally agree, and we totally understand. And that's part of our strategy. And so when we're doing these patch through calls, when we're doing these letters to the editor, when we are marching down into their offices and their place of work, we are taking a tally. We have a data team that takes all the yeses we do get, all the transfers we do get, all the no's that we do get from Rubio and Scott. And believe me, they double the yeses that we do get. But we are taking a tally. And so we want them to answer our needs, but when they're exiting, right? And so we're taking this tally. We are not surprised. Nothing they do surprises us. We'll be more surprised if they act now before they leave, but we're taking this information to pass out pink slips. And what is that going to take? It's going to take more than me and David, Jack, Relia getting on the phones and pounding this information into people. It's going to take you and know that even though we may be beating a dead horse over the head, if we could even find them, Rubio has missed more Senate votes than any other senator. And I want to say that again, Rubio has missed more Senate votes than any other senator. It's time for them to go. But before they go, what we're asking is that they patch up some of the things that they've so recklessly looked by or let pass by, or just downright didn't answer to. And so there's many ways you could join our organization as a volunteer at For Our Future. Do weekly calls, do phone banking. You could spread the word, even if you don't join as a volunteer with us, to your neighbor. Make sure people know how to vote. Their mail-in ballots are correct. Your mail-in ballots are correct. Get prepared, get activated. And so we could get these chumps out of the seats that they've so much neglected.
Yeah, and if I could chime in as well, to add, piggyback on what Juan said, through my work with For Our Future, even though I'm working on a COVID initiative, I speak to thousands of people sometimes in a given time, in a week or 2 weeks, and even though we're talking about something else, sometimes just different things jump into the conversation. And these are issues, especially with this tax credit, that a lot of people are hurting, and a lot of people need this extra $200 to $300 a month, because when you're, as it was said here, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, $200, $300 can be a game changer. And people need to understand that there's a direct correlation to these payments being stopped to our elected officials, as Juan said, holding them accountable. And I think that once people really see that, and there's a complete transparency that there is a connection between these payments being stopped and the elected officials that we're talking about, it can help people open their eyes that once we're maybe in this demographic or this voting block, that to see how the decisions or lack of decisions that these elected leaders are having are affecting their everyday lives. Because a lot of times when we talk about these issues and we talk about big picture, people don't see how it affects their everyday life. But these funds will and do help out people in their everyday lives, and how they feed their family, make, as we said, medical decisions, mental health decisions, infrastructure decisions. And when the two are connected, between the lack of leadership and empathy of our elected leaders and your real life reality, I think that's when people really start paying attention and voting otherwise.
Yeah, to jump on to what folks are saying, I definitely support what everybody is saying. And just to kind of add on to it, I think now is a moment where what we can do as organizers, while we're pushing folks to, be more involved in their state, in their communities. I think something that we can, as organizers, can do, and what folks can, take on themselves too, is feel empowered. This is the moment to share your story. This is the moment to tell people how it's affecting you, to tell people how things have benefited, how the child tax credit has benefited you, whether it be with we've managed to connect with parents, and we've managed to connect them with national news outlets for them to share their story, and have folks on a national level see that this is something that is impacting folks in real time, that the CTC isn't a throwaway $250, $300 a month. This is something that really changes people's lives. And because our government still has a long way to go before they're really there for folks, this is something that they can do right now, that they can pass right now, in the immediate, that will benefit them, and that will buy folks time, right? While folks like to say we're working on building better, this will buy us the time to build back better. And that's something that can happen now. So, get out there and share your story, and connect with organizations that are working on this.
The story aspect is key, because, as you said, because $200 to $300 a month doesn't buy you a new house. It doesn't buy you a fancy car. It doesn't take you to a fancy vacation. But what it does do, it provides food on your table. It provides buying your kids school uniforms, buying your kids school supplies. Those are the things that it really does supply, and that's a reality and a fact. So yes, the story aspect of it is detrimental in getting that narrative out there.
Absolutely. I'm actually glad you guys talked about that. I've been talking so much, but if Jack wanted to jump in and talk about, we are taking stories through some of our ventures. Jack, did you want to explain some of those things we do?
I'm sorry, or could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed that for a second.
Oh, just our storytelling. I was telling them, like, when we do our calls, our storytelling aspect now, that we are looking for people who do or have some pertinent stories.
Yeah, that's when we're on the phones, right? We're talking to just regular everyday folks. That's one of the biggest things that we need, right? That people oftentimes are moved by hearing other people's stories, right? They have a feeling of empathy, right? There's something to latch onto there, and I feel like that's so important why we're having this conversation here, right? Is that we need those stories. Like the stories can move mountains, right? They inspire people to get organized. They inspire people to really to get to work, right? To get to the nitty gritty of getting organized, right? That's how also it can't just be a methodical thing. It's got to be inspirational too, and that's what these stories come from. So yeah, like if you have a story, right, and you have something, a personal anecdote, and you'd like to share it with, for our future, like please, like message one of us or message, one of the for our future pages, anything like that, right? And we can make sure that we can amplify that story. We can share it, with the folks that matter, right? With the folks that need to hear it more so. So yeah, definitely 100%. Please share us with those stories with us.
Awesome. Well, I know one of the biggest things we're really excited to keep the conversation going and just sort of open it up for ways that people can get involved and how people can keep up with, well, Central Florida Jobs with Justice. What are good ways that that folks can find a way to plug in with y'all?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook, we have an Instagram. I think we're about to throw those in there. But we have a Facebook, we have an Instagram, and actually something nifty that we do, and how I actually kind of learned about the CTC payments myself, is we have a digital organizer who I think every month releases these reels on our social media regarding things like the CTC, regarding things like Build Back Better, utilities assistance, housing assistance. And it's like a really good way for folks who are kind of struggling through these things can maybe get some help on how to, where they go from there. But as well as connect with us and a little bit about what we're doing regarding a lot of these issues as well. But yeah, so I'll drop those in there for y'all, and we'll post those. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll certainly look forward to the continued and coalition effort on this, and of course, look forward to fighting alongside with Central Florida Jobs with Justice and all the other great organizations that are doing work in the field. You can, of course, keep up with us at the Facebook groups as well. And next Tuesday, of course, we're hosting a Blue Future Fighters, our BFF training, to get people a little more involved in the movement to make these progressive and positive changes in the state, and how we can, hopefully work together to make Florida a much better place. So we look forward to having everyone along for the ride, and really want to thank Ophelia, Jack, Darian, and Juan for bringing this panel together and sharing your experiences and stories here today. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for the opportunity, y'all.
Later, Gators.